Ladies and gentlemen, the Brit Pack is back. Well, half of us are. I'm Simon Head, and on this week's show, it's just me. I'm on the road again after UFC 205. Got back from New York City on Monday afternoon, said hello to my family for the evening, got some sleep, repacked the bag, and here I am now in Belfast, Northern Ireland for UFC Fight Night, Mousasi versus Hall. Myself and Sandhu will both be Octagonside for that event, and we'll have some interesting news about something a little special we've got coming up for next week's show a little bit later on in this one. But for now, it's time to look back at the weekend just gone, which of course was UFC 205, Madison Square Garden, New York City. Conor McGregor putting on a masterclass to knock out Eddie Alvarez. 2 rounds, 8 minutes, 5 knockdowns, 2 world titles. UFC history right there. The first athlete to ever hold world titles in 2 separate weight classes at the same time. Amazing performance on an incredible night of fights in the most historic venue you could possibly put a set of fights on in. Madison Square Garden, obviously a rich history of combat sport, and it really was a very, very special experience to be there, to be a part of it. Backstage after the crazy night of fights, we had so much going on. I sat down with a number of our press row colleagues just to get their take on some of the craziness that happened on Fight Night. Just a quick recap. Obviously, we know about Conor McGregor. The co-main event was an absolute belter between Tyron Woodley and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. But it ended in, some might say controversy, I would just say confusion. The scorecards are read out correctly, 47-47 twice and 48-47 to Tyron Woodley. But Bruce Buffer announced it as a split decision win for Tyron, which wasn't correct. And virtually all the front row of press row were bellowing into the octagon going, it's a draw, it's a draw. And eventually they managed to correct it, but there was a bit of running around going on, and it was very confusing at the time. There's also some running around going on after the Conor McGregor fight, where he was demanding to see his second belt. He wanted to get that iconic moment with one belt on each shoulder, and there was only one belt there, and it needed Reed Harris, a long-time UFC executive, to run backstage and bring back a second belt. And I tweeted on the night that belt came from Tyron Woodley, and that he wasn't too happy about it. I'd heard some conversations from some of the staff involved who were party to that transaction, and so I put that information out there. And as is the way with Twitter, the responses came back, spreading lies, don't believe him, this, that, the other, doesn't know what he's talking about. I did know what I was talking about. I knew what I was talking about. And Dana White backed up my tweet in the post-fight press conference when asked, saying that it did come from Tyron Woodley. And Tyron Woodley's reaction when he was asked about it backed up the fact that he wasn't happy about it. So just a little thing there. It was kind of nice to be vindicated when you do get a lot of crap flying around on Twitter, and when you're doing the job I do, it's an amazing experience to be able to do it. But you do get a lot of haters, and those haters really don't have much of a clue. So it's nice to shut them up once in a while, and they all went very quiet after that press conference. So lots to talk about with regard to that. We also had a cracking women's title fight between Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who put on a really, really dogged performance. I think most people were expecting Joanna to win the fight. A lot of people were picking Joanna to win it over the 5 rounds. I don't think many people were picking Karolina to show quite as strongly as she did. It was a really impressive performance from her, and she comes away from that fight with an enormous amount of credit, and the cheers that she was getting during her post-fight speech from the Madison Square Garden crowd really did tell the story of the fight. Great performance from her, even though she goes away with her undefeated record now in tatters. We had some other great fights on the card. Chris Weidman, Yoel Romero was shaping up to be to be a real barn burner, and it looked like Weidman might have just about held the edge in that fight until that huge flying knee from Yoel Romero knocked out Weidman and left him with a huge gash on his head. I saw Chris in the fighter hotel the following day, and he was sporting sunglasses for very good reason. So he was he had a huge black eye, and he'd had a lot of stitches. As had Wonder Boy, actually. He had a fair few stitches across his nose as well. But overall, it was a fantastic night of fights. Some fantastic performances from the fighters involved, and lots to chew over. When I caught up with some of my friends from the MMA media backstage at Madison Square Garden, I caught up with MMA junkies John Morgan, who deserves a very special thank you. I'll explain why in a little bit. The Las Vegas Review-Journal's Adam Hill gave us his take. Dennis and Casper from Submission Radio in Australia kicked things off for us this week. And a pair of fellow Brits. We had to get some more Brits on the Brit Pack. So Jim Edwards from Flow Combat and Jonathan Schrager of MixedMartialArts.com were both knocking about in the press room. And I managed to collar the pair of them and get their respective take on what we'd just witnessed on a remarkable night at Madison Square Garden. Check out the reaction, and I'll come back to you on the other side of what they've got to say. Check it out. All right, the Brit Pack is backstage at UFC 205 after a quite remarkable event, gentlemen. We've got the boys from Submission Radio, Dennis and Casper, here with us to break down some of what we saw here at Madison Square Garden. We'll start with you first, Casper. That main event, Conor McGregor. Could he get it done? Could he become a two-weight world champion? Could he make history? Why was anybody in doubt? He made it look so easy. What did you make of it?
I know, we're all fools for saying that Eddie Alvarez had a chance. The whole time, and I think this has been the trend with a lot of these fights, or pretty much the whole event, it was sort of a pick-em fight. You know, you could very easily see Conor McGregor doing what he did, but you also could see Eddie Alvarez going in there implementing a very disciplined game plan. He didn't do that at all. It wasn't even close. It was a very dominant performance by Conor McGregor. The wrestling and the clinch that we spoke about, it wasn't even a factor. It's not just that he beat Eddie Alvarez, because people have beaten Eddie Alvarez before. It's the level of ease that he did it with. I mean, from the very get-go, the first round was easily a 10-8. The second round, he got it done. I, for once, got a prediction right. Predicted that it was going to be a knockout. I know, right? Celebrate, rejoice. This is what it's all about. It was an amazing performance.
Dennis, what did you make of it? I mean, it was... People thought that Alvarez, and I count myself among them, Alvarez was going to give him trouble in those early rounds. He'd use his wrestling, he'd take him down. Conor just touched him on the chin first time, down he went. And it was pretty much in the bag from that point.
We were all talking yesterday about this, and I was so close to saying I thought Eddie Alvarez was going to win this because of the way this thing was going to go down. I mean, Eddie is incredibly tough. We've seen some of the punishment that he's taken, and when I was watching it, it was just like there's no doubt about it. In my mind, a couple of interesting things popped up. One of them is the pound-for-pound discussion. Now that he's a dual champion, where does he sit in this list? Because he's the first man to do it. He beat Eddie Alvarez. Sure, he doesn't have the history of a lot of these other guys. Sure, he's not like an Anderson Silva in his peak who was just destroying guys back to back, or a Demetrius Johnson. But where does he sit? Because in my mind, what I saw was just absolutely spectacular. I didn't expect it whatsoever. Eddie went down, and it was like a fight that we've never seen before. I mean, there's just no doubting. Because I think let's be honest, we get lost in the fact that Conor McGregor is this big media machine and this sort of larger-than-life persona, and that, honestly, the UFC sort of push him more than other fighters, and he gets better opportunities than a lot of other fighters. So a lot of the time we forget about the fact that the guy is superhuman. He's got superhuman punching ability, and to me, I just couldn't believe what I saw, Simon.
You know what else is crazy? You mentioned Anderson Silva. Tonight, this was like an Anderson Silva moment for him, because from the get-go, his skill has always been outshined by his bravado and his personality. But here, what you saw was very similar to Anderson Silva fights, where the guy goes in for the first round, tries to take down Anderson Silva. In the first round, Anderson reads him. He starts taunting. He starts getting loose. We saw Conor McGregor put his hands behind his back. I mean, that's a very Anderson Silva-style fight. It reminded me at moments of the Forrest Griffin fight, where Conor McGregor, was loose, he was flowing. He really didn't get hit with much of anything, and he was dodging punches with ease, and then in the end, he finished the fight. So this is probably Conor McGregor's best performance to date.
Yeah, unbelievable performance from Conor McGregor. He's obviously going to be the main headline maker moving away from this. we had a whole card of fantastic fights. Dennis, first off, pick out one or two your favourite moments that you
oh man, I mean, absolutely unbelievable. The knee from Yoel Romero, that's another I mean, this card, a lot of people sort of shout on us because I was pretty negative going into this thing, and I said a bunch of stuff about the atmosphere not being right and the fans not being there, and a lot of people disagreed and let me know about it. But the fact of the matter is, this event was just absolutely superb. The Yoel Romero knee was absolutely crazy. I mean, Khabib's performance, what can you say about that? I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a number of years now, maybe about 5, 6 years. I'm a perennial. I mean, I've been a white belt all my life and always will be. But he did stuff that I've never seen before. Yeah. Some of the techniques that he used that just absolutely blew my mind. So that was an absolutely crazy moment as well. The Carolina being able to perform the way she did against Joanna, I mean, I really thought that was going to be a blowout. The fact that she had that much height under Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Tyron Woodley, for a couple of reasons. One was obviously the fact that Thompson showed us a level of toughness that I didn't think existed. The guy was just absolutely not human as well, and also the decision being wrong and Bruce Buffer coming out of the cage. I mean, and there's probably another 10 other moments that I could list, but to me, this was just such a huge event and so much happened. I mean, you could talk about Raquel Pennington, you could talk about Miesha Tate retiring, all the other stuff that it's going to take me a few days just to process it.
It's going to take us a few days to write all of that. Yeah. Casper, what are your main takeaways aside from that remarkable main event performance?
Okay, first of all, there literally was not a single bad fight on this card. There was no stinkers, and there wasn't even any that were mildly slow. Every single fight was great. Even Caitlin Chikagian and Liz Carmouche. I mean, it started off a little bit slow. It went great. Literally every single fight was great. I think probably Joanna and Carolina, where Carolina ended up hurting her. I would say probably my favorite fight, though, was the Woodley-Thompson fight, just because it started off slow. It was a real sort of mental chess match. Both guys trying to keep distance. The distance game was at play. Then you see Tyron Woodley, rock Thompson, hit him harder than he's ever been hit before. Something that I think most of us didn't really expect. Obviously a possibility, but we all thought Thompson was going to beat him with ease. And then it ended up being a war for the ages, a classic fight. Thompson being really, really badly hurt in the 4th round and rallying, getting out of that guillotine. And then, like you mentioned, Dennis, the Bruce Buffer pulling a Steve Harvey, even though I don't think it was his fault. I think it was the commission.
Yeah, he popped out of the cage and it looked like he wanted to double check it. So
I think he was like, "Is this really a majority decision?" And then anyway, that made it an even more interesting moment. So yeah, all around, I think it's not a stretch to say this probably is the best card ever.
I know you two guys have got other stuff you need to be shooting off to do. Mm-hmm. Time is tight here. It's currently 3 minutes to 4 in the morning New York time. Very, very quick last one just for you.
Yeah.
UFC are coming to Melbourne.
Uh-huh.
Very quick word from the pair of you on that. What's your take on it? And it's taken a bit of a hit as an event. You lost your main event. But you two guys obviously going to be there covering it.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, the card isn't great. It's great for local Australians. It's not great maybe for international fans who don't really know a lot of these fighters. The locals should still go. It's in an arena, Rod Laver Arena. That's a historic arena. It's where the Australian Open is played. It's going to be an amazing atmosphere. What can you say? Robert Whittaker doesn't really have the star power that a lot of people think he does. Even in Australia and New Zealand, people still are trying to learn about him, know who he is. He's a very humble guy, doesn't really say much in his interviews. But this may be a moment that a star is born. Now, Derek Brunson's going to be super tough. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to beat Derek Brunson, but if he does beat Derek Brunson, I mean, I think fans need to realize that this is an opportunity to watch maybe a future champion in the making, having one of his biggest wins of all time. So I'm going to go from that perspective. Watch it, because you'll get to see possibly a future champion have his biggest win if Robert Whittaker can do this.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what Dennis said. If you like the middleweight division, obviously we see Yoel Romero is going to get the next title. This is an exciting fight between two prospects in Brunson and Robert Whittaker. I can't really say any better than Dennis, but yeah.
Great stuff. Appreciate your time.
Brit Pack, best podcast. Love the guys. Thanks for having us. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Simon.
All right, joining me on a monumental day in the history of mixed martial arts is Mr. Jonathan Schreiber of mixedmartialarts.com, fellow Brit, so it only makes sense to get him onto the Brit Pack. Unbelievable night. Almost every single fight on that card delivered. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the main event first. Give us your take on that quite incredible performance by Conor McGregor.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because as a journalist or someone that covers the sport, it's like you're all vying to articulate something slightly different than what's already been said, and it's almost like we're exhausting the superlatives by this stage. Almost like no superlative suffices, because the guy just outdoes himself every time, and just when you think there's nothing actually he can do now, he goes and does it again. It's just incredible. I mean, purely on the level of the belts, it's historic. Not name dropping here, but I interviewed his dad today, Tony, and as his dad always says, Tony, about Conor being an oasis of calm, Tony was an oasis of calm. And I just found, we're less than 12 hours away from his son competing for something incredible, and his dad was just super chilled out, having a coffee and a croissant, and it was as if, just a regular day for the McGregor clan. And it's almost like that's the way it's becoming for them. They're just pulling off these things with consummate ease. What surprised me most, and most people have commented on it, is the ease with which he beat Eddie. We all know how talented Eddie is. The belts evidence that he's won throughout his career. He goes out and sort of demolishes RDA in his last fight, and you think this is a serious challenge for Conor McGregor. Just goes in there and makes it look like an easy day at the office. It's just incredible, really. That's what struck me most. And also what I find amusing is that we're still going to get people online that doubt the man Conor McGregor. They're going to say, well, he hasn't fought Khabib yet, or he's not fought Frankie. Yeah, of course he's not. Great fighters don't always get the chance to fight everyone. We hope that we do see him in with a couple of these names in the future, but if you doubt Conor McGregor's talent at this stage after all he's done, I hate to use the term the kids use nowadays, but you are a hater. Can't doubt the man inside or outside the octagon.
Yeah, it's a crazy sport, this mixed martial arts lark, and we saw some remarkable things happen. We obviously saw history with Conor McGregor. We saw some incredible action. We saw Yoel Romero unleash a quite spectacular, incredible flying knee to stop Chris Weidman, who up to that point was having quite a good performance. And then we had the co-main event. We need to talk about this co-main event, John, because it started out that Woodley had the advantage early on. Then Wonderboy started to get into the fight, and then all hell broke loose in the middle of the fight. From your perspective, how were you watching it in the press room, or were you in the arena?
I was upstairs. There was obviously you were cage side, and then there was like an auxiliary press bit right. Well, I suppose you'd call it in the gods, but It was a cracking view. Yeah. I actually, admittedly, was desperate for a pee, so I missed part of the first round. But I was informed by other members of the press that it kind of went that Tyron was able to get into the mat and sort of grind away a little bit. So presumably won the first round. I thought what it boiled down to, essentially, the fight, is that Tyron won his rounds more emphatically, whilst Wonderboy looked really impressive. And I think he might have even wobbled Tyron at one point. Not in the not to the extent that Tyron obviously wobbled him, but certainly phased him. But I think what most impressed me about Wonderboy tonight, we all know his style, this kind of neo movement and the karate point system style. We're all aware that he's really impressive. I put out a tweet which I thought was quite funny, but
You're picking up your tweet there.
Yeah, well, no one retweeted or liked it, so it couldn't have been that good. I said something along the lines of Stephen Wonderboy moves as smoothly in the octagon as your drunk uncle at a wedding on the dance floor thinks he's dancing.
See, that's good.
Yeah, I thought it was half decent, but I think it got one like.
You got that in 140 characters. I'm impressed with that, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know how I did it. I might have, but anyway, yeah. So I got the one like. It might have even been myself that liked it, but so yeah. I mean, we all know that, but I think what was amazing tonight is that the guy's got balls of steel. I mean, sometimes there's this misconception with fighters that are a bit smooth and slick operators, that actually if they go into the trenches, what we're going to see from them. Well,
he's a pretty boy. He can't possibly be tough, right?
Precisely, yeah. It's this disconnect that people associate with people that are, like you say, clean, squeaky clean, but the guy's got balls of steel. I mean, he probably had a very good opportunity when Tyron rocked into to take the easy route out, especially when Tyron then tried to sink in the choke on him. And, at one point it looked like he might tap. But he soldiered his way through. He actually ended up on top of Tyron at the end of that round and started throwing strikes. And it's just like, wow, these are the kind of, I know sometimes we aggrandise things in this sport. We try and elevate it to a plane that's sort of beyond sport. But sometimes it's the sheer will of human spirit. And I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's true. It's he conjured something in himself in that round, and he got through it. It's incredible.
Fantastic performance. Give me one more standout performance from your perspective from tonight's fights. There were so many to pick from.
There were.
Someone like Raquel Pennington goes under the radar a bit. And, for someone like her, this was a huge moment. It won't get the column inches that some of the other fights will, but if you're looking at a fighter who's really advanced their stock this evening, Raquel Pennington's got to be right up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there was that really intriguing backstory with the apprentice becoming the master tonight, and that was the big narrative all week here. And then you had it was all compounded at the end with Misha basically retiring, and impromptu on the spot inside the cage. Sometimes these things, as you know, with fighters, because you've been around a load of fighters, all stages of of their activity, so whether it be camp, fight week, post-fight, and post-fight emotions are raw, whether they've won or lost. So possibly when the emotion subsides in a couple of weeks, will she reassess? The great thing with Misha is she has got other options. She could be a movie star, so maybe not. Maybe it is the right time to walk away. But no, Raquel was impressive. So I think the other performance that impressed me, that probably sort of a fight that definitely flew under the radar, given the magnitude of the fights on this card, was Vicente Luque. Vicente, actually. Vicente, Brazilian pronunciation, Vicente or Vicente?
I don't know. My Portuguese is terrible.
Right.
I'm struggling with English right now. It's late.
Because if it was Spanish, I would say with the Thente. But anyway.
Mr.
Luque was really impressive. One of the members of the press actually tapped me on the arm after it and said, this guy, he's good looking, he speaks well, he was translating his own Portuguese, which was impressive. And it was a really impressive KO. I think it was the left hook he connected with. Bilal rushed in, a guy that looked very loose on the way into the cage. He was dancing, which I know Dana's not a massive fan of. He's commented a couple of times you shouldn't be that relaxed. But no, coming on 2 weeks with notice, and I was impressed with him. It was an emphatic finish.
Yeah, it was a great night for the sport. Lots of great performances. Great to have you on the Brit Pack, John. I hope it all goes really well for you, and we'll speak to you at another event further down the line, I'm sure.
Thank you, Simon. I enjoy chatting because I very rarely get to talk. I'm always the one asking, but it's nice occasionally.
Good stuff, mate. Cheers. All right, we are backstage in a very empty-looking press conference area at Madison Square Garden. It is the calm after the storm. I'm sitting here with Mr. Jim Edwards, fellow Brit. So again, if we can get another Brit on the Brit Pack, it just makes things a little bit better. Jim, that was a bonkers night of fights. Give me your initial reaction to the whole Conor McGregor situation. No one can doubt this man anymore, surely.
Well, no, they can't. But firstly, I've got to say, this backstage press room is looking a bit sad right now. Everyone's yawning, everyone's complaining. It's 4:15 in the morning. But hey, we're used to this already. Conor McGregor tonight. That is the most dominant performance I've ever seen from him. It was clinical in every sense of the word. As he said in the post-fight press conference, he didn't have a scratch on him. Alvarez couldn't touch him, and time after time he punished him for missing that right hand. And I think it was 6th time lucky, wasn't it? Yep.
Thank you. Cheers. Yeah, unbelievable performance from McGregor, and the big question now is where does he go from here? I mean, we had him up on the dais there talking in the press conference, and it would appear his future is rather uncertain right now. What we do know is that he gave us the happy news that he's about to become a father. It sounds to me like he's pumping himself at the prospect. I've been there, I understand. If he needs any tips, he can hit me up on Twitter.
In May, not March, remember?
Yeah. That's quite important to know that. But yeah, I mean, that aside, the big thing that he really did drop as a bit of a bombshell was the whole talking about getting equity in the company, which is, you can see where he's coming from, but it's also one hell of an ask. What did you make of it when he said that?
Yeah, it was one of those lines that if you kind of missed it and weren't tuning into, you didn't quite get it, but I've seen it a few times now. I believe he said he will not return until he has a stake of ownership in the UFC. Now, that's a massive thing. Mm-hmm. He says he's not even talked properly to the new owners yet.
That shocked me. I've got to be honest. I'd have thought he'd have been one of their first calls as soon as they got on board.
It was a question I wanted to ask all week, but I almost felt stupid saying it because I thought, of course they've got to talk to Conor McGregor. He is, although they may not say it in public, that he is the MVP of the UFC right now. It does shock me they've never talked to him properly. I think they're going to have to right now, though. I think he's put his cards on the table. He ain't coming back. And I read what he said in a few different ways. I personally felt that he said that he wouldn't be returning until he's had that child. People on social media are telling me different. I don't know if maybe I read that wrong, but that's quite a long layoff for Conor McGregor. That's 6 months at a minimum.
Yeah, well, that kind of explains why it threw him so much when they said that the baby was coming later. Because he might have thought, well, I can take time off until March. We're in November now. That kind of works. You can have a few months. But if it's May, that's an extended rest. So
especially for Conor McGregor.
Especially for Conor McGregor, who quite rightly says he's one of the most active, possibly the most active champion on the UFC roster. The question that wasn't answered today, he was asked, but it wasn't answered, is what's going to happen with this 145-pound belt? What do you... There's no point asking you what is going to happen because, let's be honest, none of us have a clue. What do you think should happen?
After what we've seen tonight, 155 pounds, he was untouchable, powerful, quick, just everything he did with just total authority over Eddie Alvarez, who, I think a lot of people picked coming into this fight, but he finished him without... It just looked like a Sunday morning stroll for this guy. He walked into the octagon with a confidence that he was going to do exactly what he wanted to this man. That's exactly how it transpired.
Yeah, give me your other big takeaway from today. There were so many little storylines and headlines and great performances and bizarre moments. It would almost take sort of 2-3 days solid work to give the coverage that all of them deserve.
Yep.
The time that they really should have. But it's been it was billed as the biggest show in UFC history, and it really delivered probably more talking points than any event I can ever remember covering for the UFC. That's for sure. Give me your other, a couple of other big takeaways from tonight's event.
I believe I saw the best women's fight I've ever seen in the UFC this evening. Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Joanna Jędrzejczyk put on an absolute barnstormer. I mean, just when Joanna looked like she had quite a real control of the fight, she looked to be picking away at Karolina, nicely at range with leg kicks, body kicks. Karolina didn't look as if she was going to land that big shot she was kind of searching for the first 3 rounds. Then the fourth, it kind of just everything got turned on its head. Karolina hit her with that massive right hand. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, I can't even believe I'm saying this, dropped to the floor. It was in the title was in her grasp, but she didn't quite get the finish. Joanna, fought really bravely. I think there was all these pictures flying around the internet of what all Joanna Jędrzejczyk's different opponents looked like after their fights with her. When actually you looked at Karolina after this fight, she was still she was fresh as ever, and it was Jędrzejczyk with a broken nose and a massive hematoma was told to go to the hospital. This is, as I said, I believe it's the best women's fight. Dana's talking about Karolina having to fight Claudia Gadelha, which I think makes no sense. I know Gadelha's even got a fight lined up next month, which is that totally ridiculous suggestion. It should be a rematch. It should be in Poland, and it should be in 2017. Everyone wants it. I don't think there is a single person who attended this evening, all 20,000, the millions watching at home, that could possibly disagree with that.
Yeah, and I think it gives them a great reason to go back to Poland. First time they went, it was a bit of a scouting mission, if you like. They've got to do a little bit more than they did on that first show in order to compete with the likes of KSW, who really own that space over there. To put on a Poland versus Poland world title fight involving arguably the most exciting champion in the UFC today, it seems like a no-brainer to me. The only minor argument I'd have with you is I still think the Gedalia fight maybe just shades it, but I will give it to you. That was an outstanding contest. One other takeaway from you before we have to pack up and leave. Let me know, maybe someone from the undercard, from the prelims, who maybe stood out. We had so many knockout performances. Luque produced a superb knockout. Tim Boach, who I'm sure people are walking away forgetting he was even on the card.
Yeah.
He produced a good performance. We had some really good, strong performances lower down the card.
I mean, yeah, we did, and it's so easy to forget them. I thought Frankie Edgar put in a solid performance, maybe not the best of his career or anything like that, but he's coming off a really tough loss to Jose Aldo at UFC 200. Quite a bit of pressure on him. He was fighting almost in his own backyard, being a New Jersey boy, and I thought he put in a clinical, solid performance against a very dangerous Jeremy Stephens. Yeah. If I can also just pass a mention to Miesha Tate, obviously. Yeah. I actually don't know what to make of that retirement. Joe Rogan did say in the Octagon, was this planned? And she kind of said it was a reaction to the result tonight. Yeah. And maybe she's thinking because Rocky Pennington, someone who she's coached before, maybe she's thinking that some of these younger girls are coming through. I still think Miesha Tate can be a player in that 135 pounds division. And just lastly, Yoel Romero, I think he's the bad boy, I guess, of the UFC in many sense, and who can possibly deny that? I mean, his corner pouring water at his feet at the end of the first round, pouring extra water on him. It was absolutely pathetic. But who can argue with that clear, just devastating finish of Chris Weidman in the third round? And let's end this just with a hat tip to our British champion Michael Bisping.
Class.
It was pro wrestling style. Bisping, the champion, in the stands, giving it the old come on, and then flipping the bird at Yoel Romero, who was in the centre of the Octagon. It was pro wrestling 101. But it was excellent, exactly what needed. We're probably going to see Bisping and Romero in 2017.
And what a fight that will be, and a perfect way, referencing a Brit, to wrap this one up. Jim, thank you very much. No doubt we'll have you on the Brit Pack again at probably the next event wrap, which is next week.
Next week, Belfast. I look forward to it, Simon. See you then.
Top man. We're live. The Brit Pack is backstage at Madison Square Garden. We've lost 6 minutes of golden analysis from Mr. John Morgan, due to my inability to operate this damn recorder properly. But we're back! And we'll very, very quickly, because John's already said all this, go over what we've just witnessed. First off, Conor McGregor, amazing performance, two-weight world champion. He said it from the start. People doubted him. People wondered if he would ever get to the position to become a two-weight world champion. And here he is, history maker here in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, no, it was incredible the performance was stunning. I mean, this I think was probably the best fight of his career. I mean, I picked him via second round TKO. It's exactly how it went down. But even in my head, when I saw it going down that way, I didn't see 5 knockdowns and just effortlessly lacing in that left hand and just dropping Eddie Alvarez seemingly every time he scored with it. So just a scintillating performance by Conor McGregor. And then, to let it soak in about the history that he's setting. I mean, we again, we're always looking for angles to sell and, some type of record that we can say someone set. But to say, this is the first guy in UFC history to simultaneously hold 2 belts. And as you said, something that he openly said he was going to do from the very beginning. Amazing.
Is there any more that this guy can achieve in the sport? We've been talking about the potential for moving up to 170. Is that a bridge too far for him? He doesn't seem to think so.
Jesus. Listen, I ain't going to doubt anything that guy says. If he says, bring me, Brock Lesnar once his suspension is over because I'm going to beat that big white gorilla or whatever he wants to say, no, I wouldn't doubt it. The thing is, Conor's smart about the moves he makes. I'm not trying to take away because what he's accomplished is incredible. So don't get me wrong in saying that. But, you look at it. Woodley is not a massive 170-pounder. Yes, he's big and thick and powerful and all those things, but he's not like 6'3", where we'd have this incredible range. I think that's what I think a lot of people maybe didn't realize going in or just didn't think about it or value enough is, yes, he went up to challenge for the lightweight title, but he challenged a guy that a lot of people have always felt could potentially fight at featherweight as well, and he was still the bigger, longer guy in the cage, and that was obvious. I mean, that and that's what Conor does so well. The way he masters distance and the way he uses his long frame to his advantage is spectacular, and he was able to do that even though he was fighting up a weight class.
It was a remarkable performance. Where's he going to go from here? We heard in the press conference that he's going to become a father. We both know how it feels to know that that's coming. When he says he's crapping his jocks, we know how that feels, right? So he's got that to go through and to deal with, and you can only assume he might be looking to take a little bit of time out during that process. But when he comes back, he wants equity in the company, and it sounded to me like he might not necessarily come back at all if he hasn't got it. It sounded like a thinly veiled threat to the owners to me.
It did, and it's bizarre because it's really not an unreasonable demand, for what he's doing, for the amount of revenue that he's generating for the company and what he's doing. It doesn't seem like it's really all that wild of a demand for him to say that I need to, get a little piece of this. Now, whether or not that makes sense or how they do it, I don't know. I mean, maybe it just makes sense for them to just pay him more money if every time he fights or something like that. But truthfully, as bizarre as it sounds, it's not an unreasonable demand. And the dude delivers on everything he says. As he says, they say he talks, but he backs it up. He's the busiest guy in the game. He fights in every weight class. What he does, the attention that he commands, it's unmatched in the sport. It really is. And it sounds insane, but I wouldn't be surprised if somehow he gets a couple of points and, maybe they've got an office picked out for him at the new facility being built in Las Vegas. Who knows?
Could he be the natural successor to Dana White one day?
Oh, my God. Can you imagine? He could. I don't know if it'll interest him, but, yeah. I mean, it's weird. People used to say that about Chael Sonnen, and I thought, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe he could, but, yeah, he could. The guy gets the business as good as anybody. Now, I'm not sure it seems like he'd probably just match himself up with everybody or whatever, so I don't know if it would work out properly. But, yeah, for a guy to just stand there and be the spokesperson for the company, you could absolutely do worse.
And as well as Conor producing the goods on Fight Night, we saw an awful lot of other stars in the UFC producing the goods on Fight Night. Ioanni and Jacek had to fight through some fire to get through Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Karolina, I thought that the fight would probably go to distance, but I didn't think that Karolina would be able to put up as much resistance as she did. And to actually drop Joanna in that fight was, I mean, the gasps around the arena just told the story. That was quite something. And if you looked at the pair of them right now, you'd think that Karolina won the fight because she's come away from it relatively unmarked. Whereas I believe Joanna's got a busted nose and she's cut above one eye, and she's she had a big hematoma, I think, over one eye. So, she took a little bit of a caning in that fight, but she is still the undefeated strawweight champion of the world. Amazing performance.
Yeah, it really was. It was a great performance. I mean, I thought Joanna dominated the fight, but it did come down to that one moment in the fourth round where Karolina did all of her damage. But the fact that in the fourth round she was still moving forward, she was still throwing hard enough to do something like that, to have the opportunity to create that type of damage, says a lot about her character. And I think why she was getting so much praise for her performance, even though she really didn't have a ton of offense, but just the fact that she was able to stay in there and weather that storm and create that moment that really will be remembered. And it's funny because I thought, as soon as the fight was over, I was like, what's bizarre is that Joanna controlled about 24 and a half minutes of this fight, but Karolina did enough in that 30 seconds that she controlled to probably earn herself a rematch somewhere down the line. Now, not right away. Definitely doesn't need to happen right away. I know that's what she wants, but you don't need to happen. But if Karolina can go out and win, 3 fights, maybe even only 2, depending on the circumstances, she could probably find herself in a rematch because you would have that one clip, and she could say, hey, I had her, and that's the angle you could sell, and maybe it would be a chance. I think, you were always in favor of those two fighting in Poland anyway. Yeah. Karolina wants the rematch in Poland, so maybe they'll go to Poland next year, and it would make some sense.
And one thing we do have to talk about, again, because we didn't record the first time, was that remarkable co-main event. Tyron Woodley retaining his championship via a majority draw, but that isn't what was announced by erstwhile Octagon announcer Bruce Buffer on the night. not a moment that he'll want to remember too fondly. But it was. I think he got fight of the night, and deservedly so. And we came away realising that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson isn't just a good striker. He can wrestle relatively well defensively, but he's tough as old boots as well. I mean, he went through something in that fight.
I think he showed a lot about his character, no doubt about it, man. It was in just horrible positions and was just beat up in a couple of spots and still battled his way through it. I thought it was a great performance by both fighters, to be honest with you, and I think it's a fight that we got to do again, that we have to do again at some point. There's no question about it.
Yeah, we've got a few more bits and pieces to do. I see you're doing an incredible job of editing while being spoken to by me.
Some
so
next level stuff right here.
This is what needs doing. So we'll wrap this one up, and we will speak to you again very soon. Cheers, John.
Thank you, brother.
All right, we're backstage here at Madison Square Garden. Mr. Adam Hill of the Las Vegas Review Journal. You've covered a few fights in your time, Mr. Hill. Well, one or two of these big events you've been to. From your very limited experience of covering this sport, how did you assess this one? This was billed as the biggest UFC event ever. Did it deliver on it?
I think, in the moment right now, do you look at it and say the fights were the most amazing fights or the moments were the most amazing moments? Probably not. But I think because, those of us that have been in this sport for so long have been waiting for this day for so long. We've covered, state legislatures that we don't. That's not stuff that's part of our job. Like, we never do that stuff. And talking to lobbyists and governors and this has been such a process for so long to get to this point. And I think that most people on the outside have no idea what led to this. So to be in this building, the most famous arena in the world, and everything that signifies, and everything that this fight signified. I think you saw it in Dana White's, talking in his press conference. It was just such a culmination of so long that I think that becomes why this night was so big. Because you look back and McGregor had a great performance, but was it a classic fight? Probably not. The Woodley-Thompson fight was amazing, but it ends in a draw, so there's no resolution necessarily. Joanna looked great, but there was booing for 3 rounds. I disagree with that.
Yeah.
But you think back to that, and then the knockout by Romero was amazing, certainly. But do you look back and say, this was the greatest thing of all time? No, I don't know if it lived up to that, because on paper it looked great, and it delivered. It was a really, really good card, but I think the historical significance far outweighed what we actually saw in the cage.
And speaking of historical significance, Conor McGregor has written himself into the history books. Records can be broken, but you can only ever have one first person. And he's the first person to hold belts. It's very late. Championships in 2 weight classes at the same time.
Concurrently,
simultaneously.
Yeah.
What did you make of his rise? Because obviously, we've seen his fight tonight, but he's risen incredibly quickly to this stage, and he's backed up on a promise that he made before he ever set foot in the octagon.
I think you look at that and say he came into the UFC as this braggadocious, self-promoting machine who I think people wanted to see shut up and shut down. And I think right away people were like, oh, this guy's all talk, he's doing this. And he said, I'm coming in here, I'm taking the featherweight belt, I'm taking the lightweight belt, I'm holding 2 belts, that's what I'm going to do. And people are like, yeah, right. And he did it. And you can't take anything. Now, I know what I'm about to say, and I know people are going to say, oh, you are taking something away from him. Listen, it fell into place for him perfectly. It really did. And that's not to take anything away. I know it sounds like I'm going to. But, I mean, he saw it. He rose up, won the featherweight title. Unbelievable job by him. Then he's going to go fight Dos Anjos, which I don't think is a great matchup for him. And Dos Anjos pulls out. And then he fights Diaz twice, which he loses 1, he wins 1. But no matter how those fights went, he became a much bigger star because of it and really gave himself the platform to do what he wanted. And then he gets Alvarez, who is, I think, a really, really good matchup for Conor. And you heard him say tonight, that's a good matchup for me. I knew coming in that was a good matchup, and he showed it. And so I think it fell into place for him, but at the same time, just an unbelievable job by him to do what he did. Now, let's look back and say Nurmagomedov never gets hurt and he fights a couple times and he wins the title, Conor McGregor's not winning the lightweight title. And by the way, if he fights, he's not going to. I'm telling you, I'm guaranteeing this right now. He's never fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov. It's not going to happen because he knows what will happen to him if he does. But say Nurmagomedov gets the title, Conor never is able to win the lightweight title. So things kind of fell into place for him to be able to do that. But at the same time, you have to give him all the credit in the world for saying, I'm coming in here, I'm taking 2 belts, and that's what I'm going to do. And not only did he take the 2 belts, but he became the biggest star that the sport has ever seen in doing so. So I don't think you can take one thing away from what he's done. He has done everything that he said he was going to do and more, and I'm just continue to be blown away by his success.
Tell me what you made of the co-main, and A, the fight itself, and B, the absolute chaos that ensued afterwards, where we had the scores read out correctly, but the result confirmed incorrectly.
Well, I think the most bizarre thing looking back, because everybody points out that Bruce Buffer read the scores wrong, and he read the scores right, but he read the result wrong. But the fact that he started to read it and then left. Like, he started to read the scores, somebody either said something in his ear or he realized what was going on and he left. And then the other thing is that, I don't know, I'm pretty sure the people at home heard it, but I know we did in the arena. What you heard is the very end of his conversation with the producers and the commission outside the cage. He goes, "So, and still?"
Yes.
And so you're like, okay, so the confusion, when he's coming back in, whatever the confusion is, Tyron Woodley still has the title. But I said right then, and I said to the people that were sitting around me, I said, "Oh, it's a draw," and he was trying to confirm that means and still if it's a draw. And so I knew that was what was going to happen. But then it gets even more bizarre because then he comes back in and he reads 47-47, 47-47, 48-47, Woodley wins. Like, no, they're 2-word draws. Like, what are you talking about? So I tweeted right away. I was like, he just read that wrong. This is a mistake. This is crazy. And then they do correct it into Tyron Woodley's interview. But I thought the most fascinating thing was, Woodley, I think, thinking like, you're about to take this away from me after you just told me I had the title, and not realizing what was going on. Now, I was trying to get the microphone when Stephen Thompson was up on stage, and I never got it, but I wanted to ask him, and at the time, did he realize what was going on, and did he think they were going to change it and give him the title? I thought that would have been a fascinating thing to know from him, because he said he thought he won the belt, but then when they read the scores, they gave it to Woodley. Did he think when they said, "Oh, wait a minute, we have a correction," that they were going to say, "Hey, the title's yours," or did he know, "Oh no, they're just going to correct it and say it's a draw"? Was he thinking that quickly when he's in the cage? So it was just a total mess, and it's one of those things that adds to the the mystique of the card. You think back and say, "Oh, that first fight in New York, that's when Bruce Buffer read the scores wrong. That's crazy."
Madness. Ioanni and Jacek versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz was another World Championship fight. That one was a little bit more clear cut. Joanna remains undefeated, knocking off Carolina's undefeated record in the process. Now, before this fight was actually made, certainly from my side of the Atlantic, people wanted to see that fight in Poland. How much mileage do you think there is in redoing that fight in Poland maybe next year?
I mean, maybe, but I think, like you said, it was pretty clear cut. No, Carolina had a couple of minutes of really good success in the 4th round. It looked like maybe she'd be able to to do something, maybe change the course of the fight, but she wasn't able to. And Joanna, to her credit, I think you take away from her that she can recover from anything, she can go through anything, and she's not just a front runner. She can recover and battle through. So I thought that was telling about her, and I think the amount of confidence she's gained in her last couple of fights, where she's always talked a good game, but I think that now she just knows I am the best fighter, and I think you just see that added confidence in her game, which is really, really impressive. So I've been very impressed by her. I thought it was a very good performance. Carolina gave it a good go, but I don't think I'd want to see it right away. I think what Dana mentioned today was maybe Gedalia wins another fight, maybe then she fights, but she's got a fight coming up, maybe then she fights Carolina, and the winner fights Joanna. I think that would be a good setup for them, but I don't think right away seeing a rematch. I think Carolina wants the rematch right away. I think that's a tough sell after it was pretty one-sided for the champion.
Yeah, and we had a card full of great results further down the card. Khabib Nurmagomedov was one of the outstanding performances. So many fights we could sit here and talk about, but
he's the best lightweight in the world. There hasn't been a doubt in my mind for years. I think he didn't fight the top contender, but God, he looked good again today. When he gets in the cage, when he's healthy, that guy's a beast.
And his call-out, I thought, was perfect. That was almost as impressive as the fight. So we've got so much more to talk about, but we have just been given the finger across the throat gesture from our staff member here, who is wanting us to get out of the building. So we will do that.
To go home just because it's 5 o'clock.
It's 5 in the morning. Yeah, we should probably lock up. We should probably lock up and get out of here. So Adam, thanks for joining us, man, and I will see you at the next one, hopefully.
Yes, anytime. It's great to be with you.
Great stuff. Well, there you go. Post-fight reaction from John Morgan, Adam Hill, Denis Skuratov and Kasper Rosalowski, Jim Edwards and Jonathan Schrager. Now, I said we needed to give a special thank you to John Morgan, and as you probably gathered from that little bit of audio there, me and John sat down and poured over pretty much all the main card, and we must have recorded at least 6 minutes, maybe more, of some really good stuff. And then it became apparent that the recorder wasn't actually recording, and it was like it was about 4:30 in the morning at this point as well, and I think the tiredness had started to set in, and it had all gone a bit wrong. But thankfully, John was very, very understanding and gracious, and was more than happy to retrace his steps and go back over it again. So big thank you to him. Check out his podcast if you don't already. I'm sure you already do. But the MMA Roadshow is an absolute blast of a podcast. And actually, me and Sandhu were on it this past week. We were on the preview show ahead of UFC 205. So feel free to go and check that out. Subscribe to them and send them lots of messages and tell them how good the Brit Pack boys are on that podcast. That will just wind up Kenny, who's on the show every week. So yeah, that'll be good fun. Get on there and big up the Brit Pack. You can also subscribe to us as well. That's obviously why we're here. So get on iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, and basically just get on board, join the show, join the team, as Chris Wyman would say, and be a part of the show. You can send us questions each week. We will answer them, I promise, and we will make sure that we answer all of them going forward. We've got a few special plans coming up, so please do make sure you get those questions in. We want to make it a bigger, better part of the show going forward. It's been a crazy week. I'm not going to lie. It's been a crazy week, and after the sheer chaos of fight week in New York, we have another fight week this week, but I think the vibe will be altogether more relaxed here in Belfast, Northern Ireland. I think things will be a little bit slower. I think the pace will be slower. But I think we're going to get a lot of fun and a lot of character out of these fighters as we build up for this weekend's fight night. I think it should be a good, fun fight week. And talking of fun, we're going to do something fun for the next edition of the Brit Pack. Sandhu and I've had a chat with my friends in the UFC PR department, media relations team, and they have managed to arrange for Mr. Sandhu and my good self to sit side by side on press row on fight night, and we will record next Monday's episode of the Brit Pack live from Octagonside at the SSE Arena during the fights at UFC Fight Night Mousasi vs Hall. It's going to be great fun. We're going to get lots of reaction in there. Tweet us during the fights. This is what I need your help with. Tweet us during the fights at the Brit Pack MMA and ask us questions about the fights, and we will make sure that we will try and answer those in the podcast as we're recording it during the night. It's going to be great fun. We're going to be sat side by side, and we're going to be not so much commentating but reacting to what we see in front of us in the cage. Of course, Neil Seery making his final appearance as a pro mixed martial arts fighter. He's going to hang up his gloves after this weekend's event, so it's going to be a real privilege to be there to see that. One of the real stalwarts of the Irish MMA game, and he's going to, well, I really do hope they give him the send-off he deserves. He's taking on Uncle Creepy, Ian McCall. Big test for him in his final match. We've got the Battle of Britain in the co-main event. Ross the Real Deal Pearson taking on Stevie Ray at lightweight, and of course we've got that middleweight main event, a revenge mission for Gegard Mousasi, who's taking on Uriah Primetime Hall, who will be looking to repeat the feat where his spectacular spinning back kick set up a TKO finish against Mousasi a year or so ago. Lots to look forward to. please do jump on our new website, thebritpackmma.com. Everything you need is there. Leave us a bit of feedback on Twitter. Get in touch with us. I'm at Simon Head on Twitter. Sandhu is at Sandhu MMA. Chuck us a follow. Chuck the show a follow. And send us your questions. Review us on iTunes. Rate us on iTunes. Subscribe to us on iTunes. And enjoy the show. Enjoy the fights. And we will speak to you from Octagonside on the next one. Speak soon.